Sarah Chen weighed 347 pounds when she decided to die. Not by her own hand, but by giving up entirely. By accepting that some battles cannot be won, some dreams cannot be achieved, and some people are simply meant to live smaller lives. She was 34 years old, trapped in a body that had become her prison, working a job that crushed her spirit, and living a life that felt like a daily punishment for sins she could not name. But death has a way of refusing us when we're not ready. And sometimes, the moment we surrender completely is the moment we find the strength to fight. This is the story of how Sarah Chen lost 200 pounds, found her purpose, and discovered that the heaviest thing she had been carrying was not her weight, but her shame. Sarah's relationship with food began like most addictions do, as a solution to a problem. When she was 7 years old, her parents divorced in a custody battle that lasted 3 years. Food became her comfort, her reward, her friend when friends were scarce. By high school, she weighed 220 pounds. By college, 280. By the time she graduated with a degree in graphic design, she was 320 pounds and had learned to make herself invisible. She took a job at a marketing firm in Seattle, working in a cubicle where she could hide behind her computer screen. She was talented, creative, and completely overlooked for promotions that went to thinner, more confident colleagues. Sarah lived in a studio apartment on the 3rd floor of a building without an elevator. Climbing those stairs each day was an ordeal that left her breathless and humiliated. She ordered groceries online, avoided mirrors, and had not been on a date in over 8 years. Her life had become a series of accommodations to her size. She drove everywhere, even to places 3 blocks away. She bought clothes online because shopping in stores was too traumatic. She ate alone, worked alone, and spent her weekends alone. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October. Sarah was at her desk, working on a campaign for a fitness supplement company, when her supervisor, Janet, approached with a new assignment. "I need you to attend the client presentation tomorrow," Janet said. "It's at their headquarters downtown." Sarah felt panic rise in her chest. She had not been to a client meeting in over 2 years. She had carefully constructed her role to avoid face-to-face contact with clients, citing her preference for behind-the-scenes work. "I think it would be better if Marcus handled the presentation," Sarah said, referring to her younger, more outgoing colleague. "He's better with clients." Janet's expression shifted. "Sarah, you created this campaign. You know it better than anyone. But if you're not comfortable representing the company in professional settings, we need to discuss your career trajectory." That night, Sarah stood in her bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror she usually avoided. She saw what others saw, a woman who had given up. A woman who had let her weight become an excuse for not living. She thought about her college dreams of starting her own design agency, of creating campaigns that mattered, of being someone who contributed to the world instead of hiding from it. She thought about her parents, who had stopped inviting her to family gatherings because she always found excuses not to come. She thought about her sister's wedding, which she had attended but spent hiding in the back, leaving before the reception. She thought about all the opportunities she had declined, all the risks she had avoided, all the life she had not lived because she was waiting to be worthy of it. The next morning, Sarah called in sick to work. She spent the day researching weight loss surgery, considering whether it was time to take drastic action. She read success stories and horror stories, studied statistics and recovery times. But something stopped her from making the call. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was fear, maybe it was the last spark of the person she used to be before she gave up on herself. Instead, she did something she had not done in years. She put on her sneakers and walked to the grocery store 3 blocks away. It took her 20 minutes, and she was exhausted when she arrived, but she walked. She bought real food. Vegetables she did not know how to cook. Protein she had forgotten how to prepare. She spent $200 on ingredients for meals she had not made in years. That night, she cooked dinner for the first time in months. Nothing fancy, grilled chicken and steamed broccoli. But she sat at her table, not in front of the television, and ate slowly, tasting each bite. It was not a dramatic transformation. It was not a moment of inspiration or a surge of motivation. It was simply a decision to stop waiting for permission to live. Change began slowly, measured in small victories that no one else could see. Sarah started walking to work twice a week, a journey that took her 45 minutes but saved her $20 in parking fees. She packed lunches instead of ordering takeout. She replaced her evening television routine with online cooking videos, learning to prepare meals that were both healthy and satisfying. The first month was brutal. Her body rebelled against the new routine. She was sore, tired, and constantly hungry. She gained 3 pounds in the first 2 weeks, which nearly broke her resolve. But she had learned something important in those first days. She had learned that she could keep a promise to herself, even a small one. That discovery was worth more than any number on a scale. She started keeping a journal, not about food or exercise, but about how she felt each day. She wrote about her fears, her hopes, her small victories and crushing defeats. She wrote about the shame she carried and the dreams she had abandoned. One entry, written 6 weeks into her journey, read, "I realize today that I have been living like a ghost. Present but not really here. Taking up space but not claiming it. I want to be alive before I die." The weight loss was slow but steady. 10 pounds in the first month. 15 pounds in the second. By the third month, she had lost 25 pounds and could climb her apartment stairs without stopping to rest. More importantly, she had started to reclaim small pieces of her life. She attended a work meeting in person. She accepted an invitation to her cousin's birthday party. She signed up for a cooking class at the community center. The cooking class was where she met David, a 42-year-old divorced father who was trying to learn to cook for his teenage daughter. David was kind, funny, and completely unaware of Sarah's weight loss journey. "You're really good at this," he said during their third class, watching her perfectly julienne vegetables. "Have you cooked professionally?" Sarah laughed. "No, I just watch a lot of YouTube videos." It was the first time in years that someone had complimented her skills rather than commenting on her appearance or making her feel like she was taking up too much space. They started having coffee after class. David talked about his struggles with single parenting, his fears about raising a daughter alone, his dreams of opening a small restaurant someday. Sarah found herself sharing stories about her work, her creative projects, her ideas for campaigns and designs. She discovered that she had not lost her ambition, only buried it under layers of self-protection. "You should freelance," David said one afternoon. "The way you talk about design, the passion you have for it, you're wasting it in that corporate job." Sarah had not considered freelancing since college. The idea of putting herself out there, of competing for clients, of being judged on her work rather than hired for her invisibility, terrified her. But David's words planted a seed. She started researching freelance design work, looking at portfolios, studying successful independent designers. She created a website, uploading her best work from the past 5 years. She wrote a bio that focused on her experience and skills rather than her appearance or personality. Her first client was a small nonprofit that needed a new logo. They paid her $500 for work that took her 3 days. It was less than she made in a week at her corporate job, but it felt like a fortune because she had earned it on her own terms. The second client was a local restaurant that needed a complete brand identity. The third was a startup that needed marketing materials. Within 6 months, Sarah was making almost as much from freelance work as she made from her day job. More importantly, she was doing work that mattered to her, with clients who valued her creativity and expertise. She had lost 60 pounds and gained something more valuable, respect for herself and her abilities. Month 7 brought Sarah's first major plateau. For 4 weeks, the scale did not move. She had lost 75 pounds, dropping from 347 to 272, but her body seemed determined to stay at this weight. The plateau was more than physical. Sarah found herself facing deeper questions about who she was and who she wanted to become. She had spent so many years defined by her weight that she was unsure of her identity without it. She increased her exercise routine, adding strength training to her daily walks. She hired a trainer named Maria, a former athlete who specialized in working with people who had significant weight to lose. "The last 100 pounds are always the hardest," Maria said during their first session. "Not because your body can't lose them, but because your mind starts to resist. You've been heavy for so long that part of you is afraid of what happens if you're not." Maria was right. Sarah found herself sabotaging her progress in subtle ways. She would skip workouts when she was stressed. She would eat larger portions when she was emotional. She would avoid social situations where her weight loss might be noticed and commented upon. The breakthrough came during a particularly difficult week. Sarah had been working on a major project for a tech startup, pulling long hours and surviving on coffee and stress. She had gained back 5 pounds and felt like she was sliding backward. On Friday evening, exhausted and defeated, she found herself standing in the kitchen of her apartment, staring at a package of cookies she had bought for emergencies. She opened the package and ate one cookie. Then another. Then another. Before she knew it, she had eaten half the package and was reaching for more. But something stopped her. Not willpower or discipline or fear of gaining weight. Something deeper. She realized that she was about to throw away 7 months of progress, not because she was hungry or because the cookies tasted good, but because she was afraid of succeeding. She was afraid of being seen, of being valued, of being held to higher standards. She was afraid of living up to the potential that others were beginning to see in her. She put the cookies down and called David. "I need to tell you something," she said when he answered. "I've lost almost 80 pounds in the past 7 months. I've been afraid to mention it because I didn't want you to think differently of me." David was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, I've known you for 4 months. I've watched you grow more confident, more creative, more alive. I figured something was changing in your life. I just didn't know what. Are you disappointed that I didn't tell you? I'm proud of you for telling me now. And I'm proud of you for whatever journey you're on. But I need you to know that I've been attracted to your mind, your humor, your kindness. Your body is just the package all of that comes in." It was the first time in years that Sarah had been seen as a complete person rather than just a weight problem to be solved or ignored. The conversation with David marked a turning point. Sarah started being more open about her journey, sharing her experiences with coworkers, friends, and family. She started a blog about her weight loss, not to inspire others or document her progress, but to process her own feelings about the changes she was experiencing. One post, titled "The Fear of Success," resonated with thousands of readers. "I spent years being afraid of failing. Now I'm learning to be afraid of succeeding. Success means being visible, being accountable, being held to higher standards. For someone who spent years hiding, visibility is terrifying. The blog connected her with other people on similar journeys. She began to understand that her struggles were not unique, that many people used their weight as protection from the demands and expectations of the world. She also began to understand that weight loss was not just about changing her body, but about changing her relationship with herself and her place in the world. By month 12, Sarah had lost 130 pounds. She weighed 217 pounds, less than she had weighed since high school. But the number on the scale was less important than the changes in her life. She had quit her corporate job and was working full-time as a freelance designer. Her client list included 3 major nonprofits, 2 tech startups, and a handful of local businesses. She was earning more money than she had ever made and loving her work in a way she had forgotten was possible. She had moved to a new apartment, a 1-bedroom place on the ground floor with a proper kitchen and space for a home office. She had bought new clothes, learned to cook elaborate meals, and started accepting invitations to social events. Most importantly, she had begun dating David seriously. Their relationship had evolved slowly, built on friendship and mutual respect rather than physical attraction or emotional need. "I want to show you something," David said one evening as they walked through Pike Place Market. He led her to a small storefront with a "For Lease" sign in the window. "I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting to do work that matters," he said. "What if we started something together? A design studio and cafe. You could work with clients who are trying to make a difference, and I could cook food that brings people together." Sarah stared at the empty space, imagining what it could become. She saw herself meeting with clients, creating campaigns for causes she cared about, building something meaningful with someone she loved. "It's a big risk," she said. "The biggest risks usually are," David replied. "But I think we're both ready for big risks." They signed the lease that month. Sarah's design studio and David's cafe shared the space, creating a unique environment where creativity and community intersected. The grand opening was scheduled for Sarah's 18-month weight loss anniversary. She had lost 180 pounds by then, weighing 167 pounds and feeling stronger and more confident than she had ever felt. The night before the opening, Sarah stood in the empty space, looking at the walls covered with her designs and David's menu boards. She thought about the woman who had climbed 3 flights of stairs 18 months earlier, exhausted and defeated. That woman would not recognize the person she had become. Not because of the weight loss, but because of the courage she had developed, the risks she had taken, the life she had chosen to live. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Saw the article about your studio in the Seattle Times. Mom and Dad are so proud. We all are." Sarah had not seen the article. She grabbed her laptop and found it online. The headline read, "Local designer turns personal transformation into professional success." The article featured photos of Sarah and David in their new space, along with quotes about their vision for combining design and food to build community. Sarah barely recognized herself in the photos. Not because she looked different, but because she looked happy. Genuinely, authentically happy. The opening day was a success beyond their wildest dreams. The space was packed with potential clients, friends, family members, and strangers who had followed Sarah's blog and wanted to support her journey. Sarah's mother, who had flown in from California, pulled her aside during the celebration. "I owe you an apology," her mother said. "I stopped inviting you to family events because I thought I was protecting you from judgment. I realize now that I was the one doing the judging. I'm sorry." Sarah hugged her mother, feeling forgiveness for both of them. "We're both different people now," she said. "Let's start from here." The studio thrived. Sarah's client list grew to include major nonprofits, social enterprises, and mission-driven companies. She was doing work that aligned with her values while earning more money than she had ever imagined possible. More importantly, she had found her voice. She spoke at conferences about entrepreneurship, wrote articles about design and social impact, and became a mentor to other women starting their own businesses. 2 years after opening her studio, Sarah received a call that would change the direction of her life once again. The caller was Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a psychologist who specialized in treating people with eating disorders and weight-related issues. "I've been following your blog and your work," Dr. Walsh said. "I'm starting a new program that combines therapy with practical life skills for people who want to lose significant amounts of weight. I wonder if you'd be interested in being part of it." Sarah was intrigued. "What kind of part?" "I need someone who has walked this path to help participants understand that weight loss is not just about changing their bodies, but about changing their entire relationship with themselves and the world. You've documented that journey better than anyone I've ever encountered." Sarah agreed to meet with Dr. Walsh and learn more about the program. What she discovered was a comprehensive approach to weight loss that addressed not just diet and exercise, but the psychological, social, and practical challenges that people faced. "Most weight loss programs focus on the physical aspects," Dr. Walsh explained. "But the real work is emotional. People need to understand why they gained weight, what purpose it served in their lives, and how to build a new identity that doesn't depend on their size." Sarah began working with the program as a mentor and workshop facilitator. She led sessions on goal setting, career development, and building confidence. She shared her story not as inspiration, but as evidence that change was possible. Her first group included 12 people, ranging in age from 25 to 58, with starting weights from 250 to 400 pounds. They met weekly for group sessions and individual coaching. Sarah's approach was different from traditional weight loss coaching. She focused on helping participants identify their dreams and ambitions, then developing practical plans to achieve them alongside their health goals. "Weight loss is not the destination," she told her first group. "It's the vehicle that takes you to the life you want to live." One participant, a 45-year-old teacher named Robert, had gained weight after his wife died in a car accident. He had been using food to numb his grief and had gained 150 pounds in 3 years. "I don't know who I am anymore," Robert said during one session. "I used to be a husband, a partner, someone who had plans. Now I'm just a fat widower who can't get his life together." Sarah worked with Robert to help him see that his weight gain was not a moral failing but a survival mechanism. His body had been trying to protect him from pain, and now he needed to learn new ways to cope with his grief while building a life that honored his wife's memory. Robert eventually lost 120 pounds and returned to teaching with a new passion for helping students who were struggling with their own challenges. Another participant, a 32-year-old marketing professional named Lisa, had been overweight since childhood and had never learned to see herself as someone worthy of success or love. "I keep sabotaging myself," Lisa said. "Every time I start to lose weight or get promoted at work or meet someone nice, I find a way to screw it up." Sarah helped Lisa understand that self-sabotage was often a form of self-protection. By failing on her own terms, Lisa maintained control over her disappointments and avoided the vulnerability that came with success. Lisa eventually lost 80 pounds and started her own consulting business, but more importantly, she learned to believe that she deserved good things in her life. The program's success rate was remarkable. Not just in terms of weight loss, but in terms of life transformation. Participants were starting businesses, changing careers, ending toxic relationships, and pursuing dreams they had abandoned. Sarah realized that her true calling was not just design, but helping people redesign their lives. She began developing her own coaching certification program, combining her experience with weight loss, entrepreneurship, and career development. She wrote a book titled The Weight of Dreams: How to Transform Your Life from the Inside Out. The book became a bestseller, not because it offered a new diet or exercise program, but because it addressed the deeper questions of identity, purpose, and self-worth that most weight loss books ignored. Sarah began speaking at conferences around the country, sharing her story and her approach to transformation. She was invited to appear on television shows, podcasts, and radio programs. But the work that meant the most to her was still the one-on-one coaching she did with individuals who were ready to change their lives. 5 years after deciding to die, Sarah Chen was living a life she could not have imagined. She had lost 200 pounds, built a successful business, found love, and discovered her purpose as a teacher and mentor. She weighed 147 pounds, had been featured on the cover of 3 magazines, and had helped over 500 people transform their lives through her coaching programs. But the most important transformation was not visible in any before and after photo. It was the quiet confidence she carried, the way she moved through the world without apology, the space she now claimed for herself and her dreams. Sarah's story was not unique in its struggle, but it was remarkable in its outcome. She had learned that weight loss was not about becoming a different person, but about becoming who she had always been underneath the protection and the shame. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite fear. She had learned that change was not a destination but a daily practice of choosing growth over comfort. Most importantly, she had learned that it was never too late to start living the life you were meant to live. On a quiet evening in her studio, Sarah sat reviewing applications for her next coaching program. Each application told a story of struggle, hope, and the desire for transformation. She thought about the woman who had climbed 3 flights of stairs 5 years earlier, exhausted and defeated. She thought about all the people who were still climbing their own stairs, carrying their own weight, wondering if change was possible. Sarah picked up her phone and recorded a voice message for her blog. To anyone who is listening to this and wondering if it's too late to change your life, I want you to know that it's not. I want you to know that you are not broken, you are not hopeless, and you are not alone. The life you dream of is possible, but it starts with a single decision to stop waiting for permission and start living. She paused, looking out the window at the city lights, at all the people living their own stories of struggle and triumph. The weight you carry is not just physical. It's emotional, psychological, spiritual. But you can put it down. You can choose to carry something lighter. You can choose to carry your dreams instead of your fears. The message would be heard by thousands of people around the world, many of whom would take their own first steps toward transformation. Sarah's journey continued, not as someone who had arrived at a destination, but as someone who had learned to love the journey itself. She had learned that the best stories are not about perfect endings, but about the courage to keep writing new chapters. And she was still writing.